This
April
conference
7th,
will now be recorded.
the April 7th, City of Gerhart City Council public hearing to be followed by the council meeting. So the first thing I wanted to attend to, a couple of housekeeping things. People who are on the phone, if you could please mute your phone. And during the visitors section, we will ask you to go ahead and unmute. Christy can control it if we get feedback. She may need to mute your phone. We'll try not to do that. And under the visitor section, the procedure would be to email Chad if you would like to make a statement to the council. Changes in the agenda that I would like to do, it was probably my oversight, but we did not get the appointment to the Planning Commission on the agenda, though Chad and I have discussed it a couple of times. And I would like to add that to the agenda for this evening. We do have one appointment to do, if that's all right. And I guess I need a motion for that.
I move we adjust the agenda to allow the mayor to appoint someone to the planning commission.
And I'm going to add that, if I may, at the end of my report, and you'll understand why when I start my report, if there's no objection. And second, go ahead.
Oh, doesn't that motion need a second? I'll second it.
Oh, sorry. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. And those opposed? And the second request I would have would be to add a sexual abuse proclamation with the other proclamation that was already requested that we do. There are two items that I would like to table for this evening, and I'll explain why. Maybe you could take these separately. The first one is the noise ordinance review. And I'd just like to table that for a month or two because we had some confusion about ordinances that have been developed in the past. And I think we want to take a little bit of time to take a look at the most recent one and see if there's any fine tuning that we can do on the one that was done in February of 2014, I believe it was. So we could put that on new business for next month if I can get a motion and a second.
I move we move it to next month, the noise ordinance.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. And those opposed? And that motion passes. And the final change is the discussion on homelessness ordinance options. That one, honestly, we just need probably to have a subgroup, a work group, a small work group, work on what we can do and learn and understand what we cannot do with regards to a homelessness ordinance. And there's materials we need to understand better, myself included. Chief Bowman is happy to participate in that work group. Our goal, I think, would be to get something done maybe by the end of the year. But I think unless Peter has something that he could just give us that would work, we've got some homework to do.
Well, I actually co-taught a continuing legal education course on these issues along with the then head of the ACLU. And that was about 2 years ago. It was after the Boise case, but prior to the Grants Pass case. And so this is an issue that I'm very familiar with, and you know, and it's an important issue. It's an issue that has to be dealt with carefully and delicately, but it's certainly something that we can look at in the coming months and get to something that I believe meets both the letter and the spirit of the Boise case as well as the Grants Pass case.
Okay,
The
so,
one caveat that the Oregon legislature could do something that could change everything. So that's the one thing I can't control for. But yeah, I'm quite familiar with the various legal issues.
so perhaps in the next couple of months, we might have some sort of a draft for the full council.
Right.
And so could I get a motion on that, please?
I move that we suspend the discussion on homelessness ordinance options and wait until we have something from our legal attorney that will help us direct us in the proper direction.
There a second?
I'll second that.
Was there a request for a subcommittee appointment, or does that come later, or
Well, let's
does
vote
that work?
first. Let's vote first. But I think it's within our purview to do that. So is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. And those opposed? So Brent, yeah, we can't have probably more than 2 counselors work on it, but I'm happy to take a volunteer. I know Chief Bowman and obviously Mr. Watts would be part of that team as well. And I'm happy to do it if no other counselor wants to be involved.
I will do it.
Who said that?
The stranger in the corner.
That sounds like Gary. Okay.
It was.
That-
I would do it if Kerry wasn't stepping up to the plate, but I'm glad he did. Thanks.
Okay, that sounds great. And Carrie, I know I have got some materials that Chief Bowman has given me. I'm happy to share those with you. And after that, then Chief Bowman and Peter would be the people would have more information than me.
All right.
Okay, well, thank you very much for all of that. And so we're going to move on and open the public meeting. This is a public hearing regarding the Gerhardt Employee Handbook. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the City Council to hear this matter at this time? Doesn't look like it. I see heads shaking no. Does any counselor believe he or she has a conflict of interest?
No?
And I'm not hearing any. Chad, can you give us a staff report?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the employee handbook that Gerhardt has had was over 20 years old previous to this draft. With the help of Polina and CIS, our insurance company, and city staff, and the various managers, Jeff Bowman, Bill Eddy, Mark McFadden, we have put together a new employee handbook that is comprehensive, that is up to date, and that is good for the employees and good for the city. Today, we'll take questions about whatever it is that you might have in regards to the employee handbook. And then hopefully later today, or later tonight, we can vote a resolution to enact this as our employee handbook. I do have just a few changes that I would like to talk to the council about. We can get that in probably during discussion. They are not made. Just a few little things that have come up. And otherwise, looking forward to being done with this process. We've been working on it for a very long time.
And so those changes you're going to handle under the new business section, is that right?
I can handle them under discussion if you'd like during this. Yes.
Okay, or council deliberation. Okay, is there any additional correspondence?
No, not on this issue here. No.
Does anyone who is listening have a presentation they would like to make as a proponent of the handbook? Not hearing any. Are there any opponents to the handbook? Presentations by opponents of the handbook? And hearing none, the staff summary you've given? Okay. Are there any additional presentations? No. Are there any rebuttals? I don't think we need to continue this hearing. So at this time, I'm going to close the public hearing. And council, do you have any deliberation on this issue?
I like to see what the
No, I
changes
think
are
we
that
covered.
Chad's got
Okay.
before I make any.
Go ahead, Chad.
Okay, thank you. And for those of you that have the handbook pulled up, we'll try to follow along here. Just a moment. Okay. So the first change that I would suggest with the help of staff is under the welcome page, which is just after the title page. And what we would like to see in there, somewhere in there, that the policies stated in this handbook are subject to change. This is the second paragraph halfway down, where it says the policies stated in this handbook are subject to change at any time at the sole discretion of the city of Deerheart, with or without prior notice. Staff kind of talked about that and would appreciate that the staff actually have prior notice unless it was deemed an emergency. We talked about maybe having 30 days prior to any changes being made as a notification. So that's the first item, and I'd be happy to take any questions about that. Okay. Hearing none, the second item is on page 17. And I'll wait for you to get there. And that's page 17 number, yes. And on page 17, we'll be looking at paragraph D, as in Delta. Okay, take just a moment here. Okay. This is the second paragraph under D, delta, meal periods and rest breaks. It says now that non-exempt employees are required to take at least 30-minute unpaid meal period with the work period is 6 hours or greater. The law requires an uninterrupted period in which the employee is relieved of all duties. No meal period is required if the work period is less than 6 hours. Because of the nature of circumstances of the work, an employee is required to remain on duty or perform any task during the meal period. The employee must inform his or her supervisor before the end of the shift. What I would like to take out is prior to the end of the shift. Depending on the situations and the time people are working, that may be difficult. And I would like to leave it as the employee must inform his, her supervisor so that the city of Deer Heart may pay the employee for that work.
I think you're losing me, Chad.
Okay, I'm on D, paragraph 2.
Yep.
And it is the, I think it's the last sentence. If because the nature of circumstances of the work, an employee is required to remain on duty and perform tasks during the meal period, comma, the employee must inform his or her supervisor before the end of shift. Before the end of shift is something that we would like to make an adjustment to. And instead of before the end of shift, or we would just take that out completely. And then the sentence would read, the employee must inform his or her supervisor so that the city of Deer Heart may pay the employee for that work. Before the end of
There's no timeline.
Well, the employee will be interested in getting that done prior to it. There isn't a timeline on that, but so far that's the system that we've been doing and it's been working very well.
Well, if I may, this came up in another section with regard to overtime pay. And I'll give you the example that I was given. We have one police officer on at a time. Sometimes they have to stay over and have some overtime, but they're the only person on duty to finish a report. And so I believe what it says in this manual right now for that scenario is that it is entered into the time card by the supervisor before the next payroll period, so that we make sure it's on that payroll. So whenever the communication takes place, it doesn't have to be prior, but there is that tie to the current pay period.
That's good.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
So the language that's being proposed, Chad, does this have Chief Bowman's support?
Yes, it was a conversation with Chief Bowman that brought this up, and he used the example that Mayor Cockrum just talked about. As far as other departments within the city, there are times to where Public Works, depending on who is on, may have to work a little bit late because of an emergency or a project that needs to be finished. And for administrative staff, there are very little, but there are some occasions we have to do it also.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions about that? Okay, the next item we have is on page 19. Okay, and is everybody there? Okay.
Yes.
Carrie, you on page 19?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Back there. So this is page 19 at the bottom under compensatory time, also known as comp time. And this is near the end of the paragraph. And I'll read the sentence as it is now. Any hours not taken in a fiscal year in which they were earned will be paid to the employee with the last payroll check in June of each year. What we were hoping for is to remove that line completely. So it just is when an employee is separated from employment. I think the reason for this type of line is that in a large organization, it would be very difficult to budget for an additional week for all of their employees. The way that we do our budgeting here in the city of Deerheart, this would be something that would be possible to carry over 1 week as needed. The benefit to that would be that first month of June, the employees would still have 40 hours to use that they have earned if necessary. Otherwise, if they didn't have any hours in June, they would begin again working for those comp hours if they do earn them. Any questions?
It seems like if the money has been earned and comp time is basically dollars, that it should be closed out at the end of the fiscal year, to me. So you have a clean start July 1st. The idea of comp really isn't to carry it and carry it and carry it. The idea is to have flexibility and to try and use that comp time ideally within a couple of weeks of earning it. I mean, that's how I'm used to it being used, not as an additional vacation bank.
Thank you, Mayor.
I would have to agree with Paulina. I don't believe we need to carry anything forward. We should be able to total out our year and then move on to a brand new year.
Thank you, Carrie. Anyone else?
I guess I'm a contrarian here. I see the benefit of allowing employees to carry it forward if they choose, but I also see it as a burden to have to budget for.
Did we lose Dan?
Dan, are you still there?
I don't
I think
see
he
him.
bumped the wrong button. That happened
Yeah.
last time. He'll come back.
He's gone but not forgotten.
While we have a moment, Councillor Warren, did you have anything on that?
I can see both sides of the issue. I agree that carrying it forward indefinitely is not a good idea, but encounter it in the last week or two of the fiscal year may be a reasonable compromise of carrying it over and having to use it up within the first 30 days of the subsequent fiscal year would be a compromise that could work for everybody.
We can't have everybody gone in July all at the same time.
It's a good point. That's a good point. That's a good suggestion, Brent, but with the size of our organization, That might be tough.
He's so vocal. He's so far away from this. He's not nearly as clear.
Dan, are you back?
I am sorry. I tried to take my glasses off, hit my hearing aids, and cancel the phone call. The joys of getting old. I was saying, it seems to me that it would be much fiscally easier to plan for, actually, if you truly want to cancel out comp time on a yearly basis, that you would do it in the first month of the fiscal year versus the last. Now, yes, you're incurring that cost in the following year, but at least you then know that what you've spent and can adjust accordingly versus waiting at the end of the year for this shoe to drop of how much money do we have to pay out. But I guess that's one thought process. But personally, I'm okay with at least some amount of comp time being able to be carried forward,
Far away.
so that somebody can actually potentially have a little more vacation time to use as they please. They've earned it.
Okay, so by my tally, Carrie and Paulina would like to keep it the same. Brent came up with, having to use it up within a certain amount of time, which would be a little difficult. And then Councillor Jesse suggested that we would go ahead and, maybe put forward some of that time into the next year, if not all, as they have earned it.
So this is Rita. Oddly enough, I agree with Dan. So there you have it.
There you go.
Okay. We can do a part. We can pay off 30 hours, keep 10. That would be helpful. Budgeting, we can make it work either way, whether or not we keep it the way it is or we make changes, especially with the budget coming up. So options are there. Anybody have a suggestion?
I think the majority's fine. I would take off the last paragraph of that section, starting with the last line. Public employees are not required to provide non-exempt employees with comp time, all the way to the end of that. It references the BOLI website, and that actually overtime is should be the first used rather than comp time. I'd get rid of that whole paragraph. It's in brackets.
Okay, so starting with on page 19, public employers, and then ending on the next page, time.
Yes. I think that's more like a note from the draft.
I agree also.
Yeah, that's right.
So at this point then, and Christy, I'm sure you're taking notes here. At this point, any hours not taken the fiscal year, which they were earned with all paid employees, last payroll check of June of each year. Am I hearing that we should remove that line completely? Do I have anybody disagree with that line being removed completely?
Which line is it again, Chad?
Sure, Councillor Smith. It's last paragraph on page 19. Any hours not taken in the fiscal year in which they were earned will be paid to the employee with the last payroll check in June of each year.
So delete
I'm happy to have it eliminated.
And what's the vote right now? Because I'm still not for that.
Would be,
So by eliminating that sentence, we're saying that the manager and the employee will work out when the comp time is taken.
As we do now, yes.
I'm okay with that.
That's fine.
Me too.
I concur.
Carrie, it looks like 4-1. Just
I guess that's the way it is.
keep you up on the score there. Okay, thank you. And that's all the changes that city staff suggested in this. And again, I wanted to really say thank you. Paulina put in a lot of hours on this, and that's much appreciated.
That's a lot of work, Paulina. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And so are we going to save the resolution to adopt this till the end of the meeting then? That's where it is on the agenda.
Peter, it is under new business employee handbook draft.
Yeah, I mean, what you could do is say that you're continuing this to a date certain, which is today, at the end of the meeting, and thus begin your regular city council meeting and deal with this once it's in, you get to it a new business, and then reopen it at that point. So that would take a motion from a member, a motion, second, and a vote to continue it to the date certain being today.
Would someone
Okay.
like to make that motion?
I move that we address this issue of the handbook in our regular council meeting later today.
I'll second that.
Okay, so there is a motion to continue this until the end of the meeting, at which time we will take a formal vote. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Fine.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And so now we will begin the regular April 7th City Council agenda. Is there any declaration of conflict of interest?
No.
Nope.
No.
And for anybody who's come late, I just want to note that we have added 2 items to the agenda, the appointment of a planning commissioner and also a sexual abuse proclamation. And we have tabled 2 items, the noise ordinance review and the homelessness ordinance options in new business. And next item of business is a review of the March 3rd, 2021 council minutes and approval. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move that we approve the minutes of March 2021.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. And those opposed? Motion passes. Planning Commission report. I don't believe there was one. Is that correct?
No, I've got one from
Yes,
David.
there was.
Smith.
Yep.
I've got one.
Yep.
Uh-oh. Ah,
Did you
That's
want me to see it?
I
Dated
found
March 22nd.
I found it.
You held up the
Any-
May 3rd.
Any comments on the planning commission report?
Nope.
Okay, the mayor's report. First,
What are
I
you thinking about?
You
wanna
showed me
know
the
that
May
we,
3rd council.
Yeah, they're all screwed up here. It's just kind of
Can
the
we
way
get
they
those
do
people
things.
to mute?
So it's,
Caller 7,
Yep.
can you please mute your phone or I'm going to have to do it?
Thank you. Okay, I just wanted to mention that last month, Gerhart lost another one of our volunteers, Carl Anderson. He died after an illness. He was one of our planning commissioners. He was one of our CERT volunteers. He just did a great project doing all the research for a new ham radio, for which I was so grateful. We still don't have that ham radio up and running yet. Carl was a planning commissioner since 2013, and he was a great asset to the city with the work that he did, and I know he'll be missed. Also, want to just thank people for the generous donations that they've made for the children's play equipment. I've lost the amount of donations we've had, but Chad has kept me apprised, and I know it's well over $10,000. Third thing I wanted to report on is I did see something through the National League of Cities. It was an article that came out a couple days ago, and it had the city's estimated amount of money we may expect from the American Rescue Act that was passed by Congress on March 12th. And I don't know at this time what the requirements will be or what we can spend that money on, but we look to get about $330,000. And I don't know a time frame, and it's very much an estimation at this point in time. But you can actually find every city and their allotment of dollars on this article. Next, I just want to report that I've started meeting with Chief Bowman just to improve some communications and learn more about his work, and just so that he can learn a little bit more about my interests and how I can help him. The fifth item is that a group of us on the city staff and George Van Humissen met with Mr. Bob Morey down at the school a couple days ago. And that was to discuss the future of the ball fields. And Mr. Morey did send us a letter yesterday and said that we could publish it. And at this time, his thinking is to move the fence slightly so that there is public access to the ball fields. And he will be doing some landscaping of that area. And it may be available to the public in about 3 months. That's all I have to report. Counselor reports is next on our agenda. Rita, do you want to go ahead?
I will. I've been in contact with Tree City USA. This is regarding us becoming a tree city. They have a great website. They're very eager to help us. I really think that this will alleviate some of the problems that we've been having with cutting of trees. It will give us standards, and it will help us write an ordinance. And I think it would be really awesome if Gerhart was a Tree City USA. So I have ordered a handbook, so that will be coming soon. And there will be a small, I'm trying to make this silly, There will be a small requirement by the city to pay $2 per person per capita. So that would be a yearly fee. I hope that doesn't put anybody off. Don't listen, Chad. But anyway, I'm really involved with that. So that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Rita.
Yep.
Carrie Smith,
I have nothing at this time.
Brent Warren,
I'd like to report that I participated in the Gerhardt Small Business Committee meeting March 23rd. We've received 3 applications for new committee members. We'll be reviewing those in our April meeting and make a recommendation to the mayor and city council at our next city council meeting. The small business survey that we put out on SurveyMonkey got fairly good responses back, considering we have 170 some odd actual businesses doing business in Gerhardt. We have 24 responses to the survey so far. We're getting some good feedback. We look forward to sharing that with the city council. And so far, our response rate is about 14% of active businesses have reported back through the survey. I also pinch hit for our mayor, who was busy. I think you said you were giving people shots of COVID vaccines, Mayor. But I participated in the Cedar meeting for Clackamas County and had a number of really good speakers, presentations. I'll just highlight a few. One of them was Pacific Power has a blue sky solar program to promote green energy. They have grant funding available for various emphases. Their grant cycle is 4 times per year. There was a new county enterprise zone centered around the Bowie Beer Project and hotel on the river that's going to give tax abatements for promoting new job programs. And the county has a internship program, which has been very successful. They have 18, last year they had 18 interns in government, healthcare, hospitality, and building trades. They were placed with 11 many different employers, and 11 of those internships ended up in regular employment after completion. So great meeting. The last presentation that I'll mention is with Representative Susan Weber, who's now serving on the Education and Housing Committees, announced that there are government funds available for capital expenditure programs. And she said that resiliency and escaping the tsunami inundation area would be a priority. So she encouraged an application from us to help fund the fire station. And that's it.
thank you, Brent. And Dan?
I have nothing.
And I'm gonna just go back to Mayor's report for 1 second. I do see George Van Humison on the call, and I do want to mention that the Parks Master Plan Committee did meet this last month. We got about 400 responses on the survey, George and Austin Tomlinson did quite a bit of work to do a preliminary review of that data. We have some great trend type information, and we're going to delve into that a little bit more at the next meeting. And next are city officer reports. The chief of police and the fire chief's report were sent separately. Any comments on either of those? So we'll just accept those reports, and the city treasurer report was in the packet. Any comments on that?
I've got a question. Chad, I know that all that overtime for the firefighters was paid for by the state of California and the state of Oregon for them fighting fires. But I cannot find on the ordinary income expenses and miscellaneous any line item that shows the money coming in, and I'm confused. Aren't we supposed to have that on there? You're muted, Chad.
Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate that. There were payments that were made to us last year also, but under this, we have miscellaneous for 83,000. And then we have fire equipment revenue for 40,000.
So that,
those two make up the majority of those payments. In fact, they make up all of those payments. There's a few other things in miscellaneous. And if you would like, I could send the council a report on miscellaneous and fire equipment revenue. So you can look at that, and then we can compare it to the expenses paid out and how that
yeah,
works.
that would be great.
Okay, great. Now, unfortunately, Gail is not here today. She's dealing with a family emergency, but we'll take some notes here, Christy and I will make that happen.
That's good.
It might be
because
better.
My math is apparently not working as well as it should, because I'm at $104,000 in overtime pay, and then it's 131,000, and I only see 83, and 40 is 120. So there is a little difference, and I need to work that out for myself. So it would be great to have that report, and maybe we can just sit down and go over it.
Great, Carrie, we'll do. I'll send it to all the counselors, and one of the discrepancies is also the normal overtime for the police department or the fire department.
Okay.
Yeah, Chad, since I brought up the miscellaneous other line item last time, because that I had a question about that, it might be better to tweak the chart of accounts to have a more descriptive line item for the revenue coming in for the fire department. And then you won't have to explain it every month.
Thank you, Councilor Warren. I agree, and that's something that Gail and I talked about, and we will do that for the next fiscal budget. We didn't want to make too many major changes at this point through the audit, so yeah, we'll get there. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions on the treasurer's report?
Nope.
Okay, city attorney.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I did have one question. I did notice there were quite a few $100 disbursements for short-term rental applications, so it looked like they were refunds, and I didn't understand what that was about.
Sure, Councilor Warren. Those refunds are part of an incentive program that the city of Deer Heart has. We will refund up to $100 on their permit fees if they can show to us that they have a go bag to supply the people that are staying in their houses. And so we have quite a few people that are doing that.
Oh, that's wonderful news. I didn't know we had that program, but it sounds fantastic. Thanks.
Okay, city attorney.
Well, we have some new litigation. Chad and I are working with CIS, but I may need to file an answer in the coming week. At the risk of oversimplifying things, there is a pipe that during heavy rain events discharges water onto some private property, and it's caused some damage. And so we had to do some due diligence to figure out some hows and whys. And what we found is that the city doesn't own the pipe. The city did not build the pipe. The city did not engineer the pipe. And it was in place prior to annexation of the various properties into the city. So we feel pretty comfortable that, and that is something that I've articulated to the attorney that is suing us. We have been working with state agencies, including ODOT, we absolutely would like to resolve this if we can. And we've been meeting with various people to see if there's kind of a outcome that we can get to. There's not a super obvious solution to this. And in the meantime, we've been mitigating this as we can by putting gravel in the area that's been hit. We received a letter, or I received a letter yesterday, and we've been doing that with, the owner's knowledge. Oh, we received a letter yesterday accusing us of trespassing by continuing to do that activity. And also, they reiterated their desire to resolve this outside of litigation. And obviously, I had felt like we were really working in good faith to resolve this, so I was really surprised that we got sued. And we received a warning that we were going to get sued, and I was personally served in my office, which is also unusual for me because if asked to accept service via email, I just do. So it's been a little bit confusing for me, and also if we're in my mind, if we're trying to help someone mitigate this issue by, providing them with gravel, then accusing us of trespassing also probably doesn't sound like the best possible sign of let's all work together. But, that's not the sort of thing I can control. As I said, we've been working with CIS. They've been up to speed on this. We had gotten them, the city had sent them the complaint, but I'm probably going to need to file an answer. And then unless we hear otherwise from CIS, we also received a request for production of documents. So Chad and I will be working on that. So that has been interesting. And then the US Bank litigation that we're involved in related to the barn property is ongoing. And I conferred with Shannon Smith's attorney, Dean Alterman, someone that you folks might remember from our transient lodging or our short-term rental litigation. And so we had a good talk to see whether it's just such unique circumstances that happen where a mortgage would be recorded against one party's interest but not the other. But hopefully, we can, maybe figure something out with the bank, et cetera. And our goal, of course, is that the lien that we have against that property will be paid. We received 2 pieces of correspondence, which are kind of related and kind of unrelated. And Mayor, with your permission, I'd like to talk about those a little bit, because one of them involves a fairly novel land use process that we would need to go through, and also mention me, which is always interesting in correspondence. So with your permission, I'd like to discuss those and some options. Thank you. So when we did our community survey related to the fire station, at that point, we really believed that there were 3 locations that might work. There was discussion of a location that was just north of the city's boundary, but outside of our urban growth boundary area. And because of that, that was not considered with the others. And then because our housing needs analysis and buildable lands inventory that we were going through at the time, it didn't seem like we'd be able to demonstrate a need to bring that into the city. The other location was in the foothills. And what we learned from state experts and others is that there's land between that location in the city that would liquefy in the event of a tsunami. So even if our volunteers were able to get there in like that 15-minute period, it's possible that they couldn't get that equipment out in order to really help people. And so again, that was also outside of our city's urban growth boundary. So there were a couple of reasons that we didn't do that. Of the 3 other options, they were the immediately adjacent to the current fire station, which because of its very low elevation, that for health and safety, that poses some challenges. The High Point location, which obviously received the most votes and is at the highest elevation of those 3. And then the park location, which was just incredibly unpopular because people love the park. And, they were not eager for a fire station to go on that park. So in the intervening time during our due diligence, we've had something happen, and that we've received a letter from the Cottages of Gearhart LLC. And that is the property that is immediately north of the city, and that is outside of our UGB. And they are interested in coming inside the UGB, being annexed into the city. And if that were to happen, they've indicated to us that they're willing to donate not just the property necessary for the fire station, but also land for a public park. And they really see the fire station as something that would make their development even better. As they note in the letter, the planner that they are using is someone that I have worked with in other jurisdictions on urban growth boundary expansions. And he was kind enough to say that that I understand complex land use, which thank you. But there's an Oregon administrative rule that allows what I would term a UGB swap. And so what it does is it allows you to take land that is within your urban growth boundary, but not developed at urban levels of density, that for some reason might not develop at urban levels of density, and basically swap that area for an area that can be developed at urban levels of density. There's a kind of a study that would need to be done in order to make that swap happen. It's an expedited process, and in looking at our urban growth boundary, I tend to think that the land that is located west of the no build line, so cannot be built, cannot have any structures on it, would probably be a really good candidate for that sort of swap. So this is one of like oftentimes when lawyers are involved, people talk about winners and losers, but this is one of the rare instances where we could possibly have an outcome where everybody wins. And, during my conversations with John Crawford, who's the president of the Palisades HOA, one of the things that I asked him really early on is, if I were to tell you at the end of this process that you had won, what would that look like? And what he told me at the time is that they would not have the fire station in that location. Of course, that at the time did not seem like a win that we might be able to give them. But if this process happens, that if this swap works, that would be the outcome they would get. The win to the city is that we would save between $3 and $3.5 million. So we would be offering our residents a great amenity in that fire station at an even higher elevation than the High Point location. It actually, in talking with Chad, realized that it's closer to where the volunteers live. So it'd be easier for them to respond, and it offers direct access onto the highway. And so makes it, a good to respond to calls. It would provide an amenity for the residents in addition to the fire station in terms of a public park. We're not sure exactly where that would be or what that would look like. That would be a conversation we'd need to have if this is an option you want to pursue. It would also provide the developer with the ability to do 10,000 square foot lots instead of 20. That doesn't mean that they would get double the number of lots, because obviously they're giving up certain land for the fire station as well as the park. And there's some topographic issues as far as the stream and other things that could impact the number of lots. But it would allow them to build more homes than they could under the current county zoning, which is 20,000 square foot lots. We, of course, I think everyone thinks, despite what our housing needs analysis says, that we probably need more housing in Gerhardt. The other benefit is that, and I'm not saying this is the outcome that we'll get, but normally the larger the lot, the more expensive the home. And so I'm not suggesting that we would get affordable product on a 10,000 square foot lot, but the product would likely be more affordable than on the 20,000 square foot lot. And that's because the price per square foot when you're building is going to be the same. The two variables are the cost of the dirt and the system development charges. So by having smaller lots, hopefully they'll be able to build a product that's more affordable than the product on the 20,000 square foot lot. And so that's a win for the developer. The other win for us from a public safety standpoint is this would allow us to loop our water. So we would have redundancy in the system. So it actually provides us with more flexibility than we have now, which again, that would be a really good outcome. So the benefit to our taxpayers would be bonding at $3 to $3.5 million less expensive. We just found out about this new grant program through the state. This is the sort of thing that hopefully we could queue up for one of those grants, and we could either use this donation or the public bonding is a match for those funds. So again, this location was not on the survey, so we don't know exactly the amount of public support for this. But given all the positives for this, it seems to me likely that there would be pretty high public support for this location, and that would be my hope. Obviously, whether to pursue this or not is will be up to the council. And we would need to do a little spending on the front end, because we'd have to look and make sure that this was the best place to move that urban growth boundary area. The zoning on the land that we're pulling out in the zoning on this, per the administrative rules, has to be the same. So it has to be an R1. We don't have the ability to go any higher density than that. And that was a little bit disappointing, because we had talked about maybe clustered cottages or something, but that's not something we can do under this current Oregon administrative rule, unfortunately. But again, I think you know, to not have to worry about the litigation associated with High Point, and all of that is probably worth spending not a huge amount of money. I took a preliminary look at our urban growth boundary expansion to see whether there would be another area that would perhaps be more viable that's immediately adjacent to our urban growth boundary, but not in it. And there really isn't, because all the other areas that are outside of our urban growth boundary are already developed at, like, I'd say more urban levels of density. So for instance, the land further to the north, and then the amount of infrastructure that it would take if we were to ever go up into the hills is just such that as a planner looks at it, I don't think that's going to be a viable option. So I do think that this likely is going to come out as part of that study as the place to put it. Again, it needs to be at a bare minimum acre for acre. So if we need 32 acres in the city's zoning will be different, but or maybe not, but it will need to be, certainly for the park it would be, but we need to do at least 1-to-1 ratio. You can go higher, but you can't go lower. So I just thought this was, you know, I love good news, particularly given all the litigation that I've been part of recently, not just in your jurisdiction, but everywhere. But this seemed like really positive news to me, and so I was just hoping to and I think most people probably saw that letter, but to provide some more information from people that are attending this meeting via phone, so that they would have a better understanding of what this is and how it might work. That's all I got.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that report. City Administrator.
It's
Mayor, I think Councilor Warren wanted to speak.
I was just going to interject. It's rare that an attorney gets to bring good news. We appreciate it.
Right.
Okay.
And Chad?
Mayor, I'd be happy to go ahead. Thank you very much. So we have the city administrator report. There's a few things I wanted to highlight, and there's a little addition. The highlights amounts were the county risk level as of today has remained in moderate risk. So that's an update for that. And Mayor Polina, I'm sorry if I don't remember, but did you update the vaccination distribution? And do you have an update for us?
I don't exactly know, but I know by about 2 weeks from now, virtually all adults, I think, will be eligible. And the clinics right now in Clatsop, there have been 2 1,000 person vaccine clinics, one last Saturday in Seaside and today up at the fairgrounds. And so things are really wrapping up. And just encourage everybody to get their vaccine when you can. Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Mayor Cochran. Another thing I wanted to highlight under day-to-day heading was the building department information. As you can see by this information, 2018, 2019, and 2020. In 2018, we had 35 new residential permits in all of 2018, and this is from January to December. In 2019, we had 23 residents, and so far for the year of 2020, we've already had 25 new residential permits come through, and that doesn't include all the little type of remodeling and that sort of thing. We also have a residential duplex permit in-house also. So that's just a kind of an indication of how hard the planning department and city staff have been working towards that. So finance, accountable, payable, talked to the city auditing group yesterday, and we're getting close to wrapping up the audit. So there'll be more information coming out of that soon, and I'll let you know as soon as I know more. Applications for the city treasurer, water clerk, and administrative assistant. This was posted everywhere we could, the newspapers, online, and a few websites for job recruiting. And we did receive about 10 applications. And I think we've got a really good one that I would like to offer the job to, pending confirmation by the city council. The position, part of it being treasury, is an unelected officer's position, which is approved by the city council. So this is the reason we are holding on to next Monday at 6 p.m. for a special council session to potentially bring her in, the applicant, have you meet her, and then hopefully for you folks to designate her as the treasurer.
One? You said several.
Yeah, I guess they're looking at only one.
Still caller 10, looks like you're not mute. We can hear what you're saying. Thank you. So, and this is the, as I heard that, this is the position Gail has currently and is retiring by the end of this month. So it's a pretty tight timeline. Still 2 budget committee vacancies. Deadline was April 29th. And we also have the 21-22 grant donation request applications on the blog and the website, which is a deadline for April 15th to be added for donations from the city of Deer Heart. Public Works, you saw that there was a Meadows Development water pipe extension and the water treatment facility equipment replacement and repair. I have an update from Mark McFadden that they finished up the project on the number 10-2 skid unit, and number 1 is now also back in operation. So along with replacing the manifolds, they cleaned, pressure washed, welded up some thin spots in the tank, and recoated the tanks with new epoxy. So that was a major feat that they took care of. It was a lot of work to take those apart. That's now been completed. The backwash tanks have been pumped and the sludge was hauled away as normal. And they installed approximately 300 feet of 2-inch main on E Street, going east towards the ridge path to service a new house and to eliminate a dead-end main, which with all this development, we're getting quite a few opportunities to do little upgrades, but the development is happening in these kind of odd little pieces of property that are also very difficult to get water to, and have been in the past, one of the reasons that they may not have sold. So, excuse me, the public works staff has been very busy. 6-inch main extension on North Ocean was completed and tested. New meters, excuse me, at the Gearhart House. And we've been working with a few construction folks on Meadow Lane. Installed a new data transducers, 2 new data transducers, number 7 and number 11 wells. And we sent some chemical feed pumps in for repair, chlorine generator in for repair. And yeah, our required yearly water samples for arsenic and nitrates both came back as non-detected. Non-detected. Yeah, and our new employee in the Public Works, Joe, has been working out fantastically. Mark McFadden is very happy with that. Emergency cash program, this next Wednesday, April 14th, you have access to the emergency cash. You can buy barrels from us. You can bring your barrels in to be brought up to the cash site. And we still have 6 available drums for donation that gentleman donated to us. Ridge Path, the construction is stalled due to rains, but it's starting to drain out a little bit. And We have most of the materials needed and should be able to get started on that here fairly soon. As you saw, the Pacific Power Grant was declined. Earth Day cleanup, Saturday, April 24th, time 8 to 11. So residents of Gearhart can dump at no charge. There's information on the website and calendar. And one thing I wanted to bring up is the In a Landscape request. This is a group out of Portland, Oregon, where a pianist is in a natural environment. People are able to listen to a concert with headphones on in these natural environments. It's pretty popular. They have requested August 13th, 14th, and 15th. And through their investigations, they would like to do this in Leslie Miller Park. The runtime for each show is approximately 90 minutes. And they would have a load in at 9 a.m. and they'd probably load up by 9 p.m. They'd be selling tickets for 30. The audience is 250 per concert, and that's important here later. And let's see, apparently a percentage of the ticket revenue will be donated to the Gearhart Fire Department, but they haven't said anything. But one of the challenges, environmental impact, they've talked about leave no trace policies and COVID-19, it will follow all state and local guidelines. And they have a rider attached. But the concern is finding parking. I'd given them a number for a person that had parking, Mr. Maury, and I'm not sure that worked out. I'm not sure if he was contacted or not, but this group, if we allow them to do this event in Gearhart in August, we would need to find parking. And they would also have to be kind of a motion by the council to move forward with this. And getting down to brass tacks, again, they'd like to do this in August and start selling tickets as soon as possible. So I'd like to kind of pause there and see if any of you had any questions about this In a Landscape. Should we move forward with them? Should we not? And do you have any ideas about parking? Okay.
Is that a weekend?
I believe it is Saturday. Let's see here. Yes, August 13th, 14th, and 15th. I believe it's Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Let me double check here. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It is over a weekend in August.
Any other comments by the counselors?
I have a comment. If the landscape is August 13th and 14th, and then down a couple of little bit went down, the Salt Gearhart Beach cleanup is on Saturday, April 17th. Is April 17th? Oh, I get it. I'm sorry, I'm looking at April versus August. Never mind.
Yeah, thanks, Councilor Rita. They did add, so on my report, I just had the 13th, 14th, but they would also like to add the 15th of August.
Okay, got it.
Brent, do you have any comments, or Dan?
I'm not opposed to the event, but I have no recommendations for parking. I'm at a loss in trying to solve that one.
Yeah, I think until we know how many vehicles are going to be coming, it's going to be kind of hard to plan. Maybe we approve the event and then get estimates for the number of vehicles and make adjustments in the parking plan accordingly. Maybe have to do some shuttles.
Thank you, Counselor, I did put that out to them, and they're working on it, but so far I don't think they're having any luck. The numbers that they're talking about are 250 per concert, and they will have a limited number of free tickets available for local groups. But I'm sure quite a few locals would be in there. There is a local person that is kind of helping sponsor them with this, because this person has been to these concerts and think that they're just absolutely beautiful, and just thought it would be a nice thing for Gearhart. But we've got some challenges with parking. So I'll get back in touch with them, see if we can find any other resolution to the parking, and then I'll report back to you as soon as possible, potentially through email. And then we can talk about it either at the next meeting or during the special council meeting. I may put this as an agenda item also, if I get some information. Is that all right?
Yes.
Yep.
One question I would have is if we had a parking plan, could we use a mix of public and private parking without getting into a lot of liability issues?
I'll let Peter answer that one. I don't think there's much in the way of public parking that would be an issue.
Yeah, we would need those private property owners to be willing to allow that, and then we would need some way to signal where those were and where they weren't, so that people could know. It might be possible to work with another jurisdiction, like Seaside, and then have shuttles so that people could, park at the old high school and then take a shuttle into the performance. I do have a question. It's going to seem a little odd. Are they playing music that was written prior to 1925?
I have heard that this is, I think, all written by the artist.
Oh, it's written by the artist. Okay. Because the legislature changed the law a couple years ago to make it so that it's the entity that owns the property that's liable if copyrighted music is performed. And it's like and they're beginning to enforce it. So there are really three or four music publishing companies, and we would need to get a license from them if it's copyrighted material so that it could be performed. Otherwise, it's pretty onerous. Like it states we'd be on the hook for attorney's fees, and it's a fine as well as the damages up to $1,000 instance. So like each song would be $1,000. So we just have to be super careful about people performing music, and that used to only be in effect. I mean, it used to be the performers that were on the hook, but now it's the property owners, and it's written widely enough that it's wherever music is performed. So like if a cover band's playing in a city park and BMI's there, it's the city that's looking at a major fine, and
Wow.
not well known at all. I mean, the fact that like this is not. I think there are a lot of people that are not aware of these legal law changes. They happened in like 2018, 2019.
And Peter, I think they did mention that they would do some covers of some previous artists. You may have heard Beethoven or Chopin or something like that. So I think they're outside that.
Yeah, so you only get the copyright for a certain number of years, and I think we should be I think it's 1926. It's either 25 or 26. So anything prior to that is still is fair game. So if they want to play like Paco Bell's Canon, go right ahead. But if they're playing something written in like the 50s, then and we don't have the license, then we have a problem.
Okay, thank you. So I'll work further with that, and then maybe Christy can help me with this. In July, the Sparrow Dance Company out of Astoria is also looking at a performance and potentially a comedic silent movie street show. And what their detail is these kids haven't had a place to perform, so they're working on doing some outdoor performances from Astoria. And Christy, did you have any more information about Sparrow?
No, they were just wrapping up their musical theater, and then we're looking at this new show. She said that they would arrive about a half an hour before showtime. They'd take that time to stretch and kind of get their grounds at the performance space. And then the show runtime was approximately an hour. And then obviously there'd be no cleanup. The conversation you just had regarding the music, though, that's interesting from a dance performer perspective, right? Playing music. But this says it's a silent show, so probably good.
So there's also that, and Christy and I will get more details of exactly what that means and get back to you. I think they're more flexible than in a landscape group.
And if anyone wants to inform arts organizations about the statutes, it's ORS 647.700 through 730, and it defines perform means to disseminate a musical work by playing a recording of the musical work in public, by broadcasting the musical work by radio, television, cable television, satellite, or other means, or by playing the music work live in public. And then as far as who is responsible for the licenses, a proprietor is defined as means an owner of a retail establishment, restaurant, inn, bar, tavern, sports or entertainment facility, or any other similar place of business or professional office or located in this state in which the public may assemble and in which copyrighted musical works may be performed. That it's like basically anywhere that music would be performed. If you own it, you're the proprietor. So, we'd be the proprietor, and we would have to get licenses from at least Performing Rights Society, means an association or corporation that grants a license on behalf of the copyright owner to perform a copyrighted musical work, including but not limited to the following societies and corporations: the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, ASCAP, Broadcast Music Inc., which is BMI, and then CSAC.
Wow.
So I got to
That's
provide some
incredible.
good news earlier this meeting. Now I can return to my familiar role of like Captain Notebook.
So I guess we got no elevator music anymore.
We'll look on the on hold music for you, Councillor Smith.
Yeah.
It'll be a piece by Peter and I. Peter playing baritone. The only other thing that I had here, I just got a note. It looks like Monday, April 12th is on the evening at 6 p.m. Christy and I will go ahead and send you the information and the notices, and we can move forward.
Chad, just one question on that. Are we going to do a formal interview with pre-prepared questions, or is this more just want to meet and informally ask questions?
I think this would be more informal. I formally interviewed her. I can also give you and forward to the council her resume. And then I think keeping it informal from this point, we will also be sharing the scores of a test that this person will take in regards to accounting. So all of those things I think will be fine. I don't know that we need to do a formal unless you request it.
And this will be an online meeting?
Yes, ma'am. Unless you'd like to try something different, but we're still have a hard time with the amount of meeting space that we have in regards to allowing the public to attend. I'm not sure, Peter, if we could have the council in the meeting room and then go ahead and transmit over Zoom to the people that, you know, the public that would want to attend. Is that something we could do?
I mean, as long as we were masked up and socially distanced, then under the governor's guidelines, it would be possible to do. If we were to do it outside, that might be another option. Again, I mean, we've just got to make sure that people are wearing masks and are socially distanced. But broadcasting it, you know, is more challenging. And wherever we were, if we went with another venue, we'd need to make sure that it was ADA accessible. But those are really the only limitations.
Thank you. I see that Chad has muted himself. Were you done? Chad?
That's number 2 for Chad. We do have some equipment that we can do this with, online meetings here in the city council. But I think at this time it might be a little too quick to be able to do that. Moving forward, we're also going to leave the GoToMeeting platform, and we will be moving over to the Zoom platform by the next regular city council meeting. We may even give it a chance to try out during this next one, but I think it would be best to go at the next regular meeting.
And if we're moving to Zoom, can you make sure that everybody gets whatever the special in-service is for setting preferences on Zoom? So I know there's been some hacking and other stuff into public meetings. So make sure we find out about that so we can set our preferences properly.
Will do, Mayor.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on. We have correspondence. Is there any comment from the council on correspondence? No?
So we can just, I'm sorry, we can just leave the liquor licenses alone, and the OLCC will grant them on the basis that we did nothing to oppose them.
That is correct, Councillor Smith. Exactly right.
So we could just bypass that since we've already approved everything but 4, and they all seem to be businesses that have been practicing for years. Well, except for that stop and go kind of market out on the highway there.
They were granted a temporary license, and to my knowledge, there hasn't been any issues regarding alcohol from any of these places.
Does Chief Bowman have a chance to look at this report?
I believe he's seen it. He's seen the packet.
Okay. All right. I'm going to move on then to ordinances and resolutions. The first one is the Child Abuse Prevention Proclamation. And we were contacted in February from CASA about that. And this is to declare April 2021 Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month in connection with the National Child Abuse and Prevention Month for April 2021. The second is a proclamation for April 2021 to be Sexual Assault Awareness Month in the city of Gerhart, and we encourage all residents to join us in this observance. And perhaps we could post those on the blog in a day or two so that residents are all aware. And anything they can do to help those agencies connected. One is CASA and the other is the harbor. That would be great too. We're going to move on to,
Madam Mayor,
yes,
may I make a motion that we so declare those proclamations as part of the city business?
thank you. Yes.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed? None. Now we're going to move on to fire station update. We already heard a lot this evening. Chad, what do you got?
Well, I've got, it's just been slightly updated. I do have the presentation that I've done before. If you'd like me to go over that again, I would be happy to. Otherwise, I'd be happy to answer any questions from the council at this point that I can help with. Either way, Mayor, to go through this, it would probably take about 20 minutes, maybe a little less.
If there's anybody in the audience that would like for you to go through the report, I would like you to do it, I think. But it is posted online, is that right?
It is, it has been online. There is a printout of approximately 33 slides, and it describes the history, the background, a review of the 2015 portion, the town hall information that we've done, and the due diligence. There was a nice quote from Meg Reed with Department of Land Conservation and Development that kind of sets the stage as to why we chose High Point. And then there is a cost analysis for the business, or the building cost analysis and the bonding issues. And there are also some frequently asked questions that were applied to that might also be good to go through.
Do you want to go ahead with those high points then?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I can put this up on the screen, but I think all you folks have it. I'll just go ahead and read it off as I have it now, unless you want it up on the screen. Essentially, slide 3 was about the 2006 measure, and this is part of the background. In 2006, we went for a measure to approve bond financing for a new facility, and 588 citizens voted, and it failed 327 to 231. At the time, that proposed plan was to build a large building that encompassed a new fire station, police department, and city hall, administrative offices also. And funny thing, at the time in 2006, that bond amount that was voted down was for $3.75 million. The costs have definitely gone up, and so has the building code requirements. So we put together a committee that helped look at all the various different sites. We came up with 9 locations that we really looked at seriously. And then we worked on a matrix to talk about the pros and cons of those. And 3 sites came up to be the most popular, as Peter Watts had mentioned. And so again, that would be the current location as it is at about 22, 24 feet in elevation. The park location, which I think at the top of the park was about 58 feet in elevation, and High Point, which currently is about 72, but we'd have to bring it down to 60 feet. And that would be the elevation there, about 60. We held town halls in 2019. We went through a vigorous program in regards to a survey, and we got a ton of surveys, and those are all online. And essentially what the survey says is 82.5% support a new station. 79.4 supported a bond. 63% supported private donations. 52 supported the High Point Station as their number one choice, 52%. 30.7 supported the Pacific Way Station, and 17% supported the Park Station as the number one choice. So in May 2019, Council voted to take the park location off the table and begin due diligence process on the possibility of building in the public's number one most popular location, which was High Point, according to the feedback anyway. So after that, we did a lot of due diligence. We talked to a lot of experts. We worked with an architect. We worked with structural engineers. We worked with environmental folks dealing with the makeup of the dune. And we went ahead and kind of came up with the most accurate pricing that we could do, being very carefully not understating what the cost could be, because we don't want to be caught with too little money and then having to go back to the public, which is a really difficult thing to do. But really, it's up to the Gearhart voters. And moving forward, if this location is chosen, because the city council wanted to head that direction at the point, we will have to go for a bond in September. So we'll have to actually have that, a lot of that information submitted to the county, I think by August 13th. There's a quote in here I took from a letter that was from Meg Reed. Meg Reed has been working very closely with us. She is the Coastal Shores Specialist in the Oregon Coast Management Program with DLCD, or Department of Land Conservation Development. I just wanted to go with this quote here real quick. It said, after several months of collecting community feedback on 3 proposed fire station locations, it is our understanding that the High Point location is the community choice. This location is the most tsunami resilient location of the 3, and we support the city's efforts to move forward with this location. A location above 50 feet in elevation in Gearhart is above the large tsunami scenario, as modeled by Oregon Department of Geology and Mineral Industries, DGAMI. The large scenario represents 95% of the variability of the next subduction zone, meaning 95% likely that it will be large and under, so survivable at 50 feet elevation and above. So in Gearhart, there will be a level of tsunami inundation, and then hopefully building the fire station above 50 feet. The new building will be a community resource for recovery and resiliency after such an event. And I'd like to add to really any event that would happen to Gearhart, that station would be available. So Meg Reed's help, DGAMI, kind of helped us choose this location, and that's things that you took into consideration. So the High Point Station, we did a little rendering of what it could look like. But again, to get in the final phase of planning, architectural and structural design, that's a couple of $100,000 to get there. So on a budget, we did a simple rendering, a simple plan for the foundation, and then worked with a lot of people to check to see what our prices would be. So the High Point Station is approximately 62 to 65 feet at the building site. The building type is 11 to 13,000 square feet, double level. Most likely because of the geographic constraints. It's a small piece of property in a larger building. So we would have to do some design to get the parking in there and all that. But the building and the parking itself would be at the top of the dune at this current location, not at the bottom where it's lower. So the elevation again is 62 to 65 feet on everything that would make up the fire department. We do some planting trees and shrubs to minimize impact. Attorney Peter talked a little bit about the zoning, zoning for that facility. And the cost estimate is currently at 13.5, which includes construction, property acquisition costs, potential property acquisition costs. It also includes some money for legal fees. It also includes some money for the interior building items, such as soft goods, as some desks and things would be built in, but chairs and technology and that would be added in. So we did some basic planning for those. We got a geotech report and site prep costs, and that was done by PSI, Professional Service Industries, which is a geotech study. And they told us the following, that there is a need for rammed aggregate piers or vibro stone columns to offset liquefaction concerns. Again, on the top of a dune, when it shakes, liquefaction will kind of spread the dune out a little bit, not a lot, but enough to maybe break a building up. And so these stone columns would in fact most likely prevent that. And this whole process of the type of foundation and the stone columns added about $1 million worth of work. Side note, wherever we put this station, due to liquefaction, that type of foundation and the stone columns will be required in order to stop the damage. And that was, and we also did some work with environmental, other Wilson Technical. We had the whole thing reviewed by another group and they concurred. So the building cost estimates for this with contingencies, including market location factor, extending out to construction start of May of next year, which adds approximately 6.25% of the cost of the building every year, $393,000. The general conditions, insurance bonds, overhead and profits, solar energy. The building itself comes in at a total of about 5.2 million, and then the property and all these other costs, or excuse me, not buying the property, but this is a total not including the property, is about 8.6 million. I did a little bit of breakdown. You'll see that from the ACC cost consultants. They're pretty well known around the area for doing some accurate estimations, and they did the best that they could with what they had. And so with the cost of acquiring the property, which was at the time potentially at $3 million when it was first offered, that would bring us up to 13.5, almost 13.6 million, which is an estimated levy rate. Cost per thousand, per $1,000 on your home is $1.02 per $1,000 assessed value. So some examples of what that cost would be if the residents approved. A $300,000 home would be $306 a year. A $500,000 home, $510. $750,000 home would be $765. And the math was easy on a $1 million home. If we revise it, would be $1,020 per year. All the way down to a $200,000 home would be about $204. And so that kind of gives you a pretty good spread of what it would look like. The interesting thing is that by 2026, approximately 3 years of paying a higher dollar amount per thousand. Let me back up. Currently, we have two bonds out. Those are both the Series 2015 bond, which was done in 07. It was 015 because we refinanced it for the same amount of time. And the Series 2011 bond and this is potentially after refinancing, and we're going to talk about that later. One of those bonds is going to drop off here beginning 2026. And that plus a new bond for 13.6 million will be about what we're paying currently. It'll be about $1.44 per thousand. So in 3 years, the taxes would go down back to what we're currently paying for the two bonds. But for those 3 years, the taxes would go up slightly by $1.02. So those 3 years look like, again, we're at about $1.27 through $1.44 current taxes. It would bring us up to $2.14 year one, approximately $2.11 year two, and then we would have a total of $2.07 for year three. And then after year three of paying those higher taxes, the next year it goes right back down to $1.40. The second bond drops off at 2032, and that would leave us with just the $13,600,000 bond, which payments on taxes would be $1.02. So there's quite a bit of savings once the first bond drops off, and then the second bond will drop off in 32. So Peter talked about some of the issues with the urban growth boundary and all of that, and the way that the property would have to be brought in. We also have a more recent from the Murphy family, Ed Murphy Sr., that's in the correspondence. And that said, if you'd like, I can go over a few of the frequently asked questions, but that really is the highlight. Mayor, what do you think?
So we know the complications with the High Point with the Palisades homeowners. That's a complicated process. The Murphys have now sent a letter saying they're not that interested in selling us the property. And we have a letter from Mr. Olsted saying he would like to donate property outside the UGB, North Pine Ridge, called the Cottages, a yet to be developed neighborhood. Is that all about right?
Yeah, that's,
You're muted, Chad.
That is accurate, Mayor.
There you go.
I feel like we need to do a survey very soon to the voters, especially, to find out interest in an alternate location to High Point. I am not interested in revisiting the park location. And after studying and working on resilience, I would find it very hard to get behind the downtown location because of its height. Or its elevation, excuse me. So I do feel like we need to have a quick survey to find out what support we could have and whether we have to do another town hall. Prior to that, I'm open to suggestions from the council. And I guess I'd like to hear what they have to say too.
Well, I'd really like to pursue the property from the Olsted letter. Do we have to do any sort of testing, like soil testing or anything like that on the Olsted property? Or not, yeah, from this letter?
Thank you, Councillor Fackrell. Yes, we would have to do some geotech survey work so that we have a clear understanding of the way that this dune has aged over time. It's an older dune than the dune that's in Palisades, which could mean that it is better suited for such a building. Also, this location, for people that aren't familiar with it, it's a location on the dune between the highway and right off the highway, between the highway and I guess Highlands neighborhood and that golf course that would be easiest to see. But right off the highway and that elevation, the building elevation at that point would, if everything worked out, could be about 70 to 72 feet in elevation, which would be 10 feet higher than the current High Point station, as it would sit.
I think it's important to point out too that at the time that we did the initial survey, there weren't these potential state grant resiliency dollars available at that point. I think it will be really difficult for us to get those for the downtown location because of the elevation. It's at one of the lowest lying points in the city. So we really need to meet their resiliency requirements, we really want to be at as high an elevation as possible. The other piece is we didn't know the amount of opposition. We really did not know that there would be opposition from the Palisades Homeowners Association at that time. And we didn't know that this land outside the urban growth boundary might be available to be brought in, which is just to say that my guess is feelings about the park haven't changed at all, but feelings about both what our options are, the money that we might be able to achieve at a high elevation point, as well as opposition to the High Point and the potential of a donation are really factors that might change the outcome of the opinions of residents when they decide what location they think is the best location.
And to add to that a little bit, on slide 32, we're proposing a small public feedback survey. And first, there'd be a series of just 4 questions. So far we could keep it easy, but we're open to ideas. But are you a Gearhart homeowner, renter, or business owner? Be one of the questions. Are you registered to vote in Gearhart? And then, do you agree with the city's plan to build a new fire station at the High Point site? Yes or no? And would you support the necessary bond financing to pay for it? With Christie's help, we have that survey ready to go whenever council would deem it necessary to do that.
So my other question is this: if we would like to pursue the new location, what is the next step that we do?
The next step is I'd like to take the counselors again up to the location to take a look at what it looks like. We would need to get into some negotiations with Mr. Olstead and his team. And then after we had that direction from Mr. Olstead and the council, we would probably do some geotech work up there initially. A lot of the information that we already have, like I said earlier, what we learned about the foundation and the stone columns, the approximate size of the building, the approximate cost of that building. I mean, maybe we could go from 2-story to 1-story, and I talked to Councilor Jesse about that sort of thing, and savings would be nominal. Some other savings, I know you're on next steps, but the other savings would be we wouldn't have to build as much retainage walls in this particular location, potentially with a large savings too. So I think the next steps would be to work with Steve Olstead, and then once we have something that we can agree to move forward, we begin doing some geotech testing, and that will probably cost somewhere in the range of, I think, $25,000, somewhere near there.
Thank you.
When would you be thinking of doing the survey then? Before all of that or after?
Well, I've been waiting because you've been waiting for this information. Now that you've heard it and the public has seen it, it's been online since Friday and it will continue to be. It would be your direction for us to send out the survey as I explained in the draft format. We can do that very soon. As a matter of fact, we could probably have it started even next week.
I would suggest modifying our proposed survey slightly to include a vague alternate site outside of the current city limit, and put that out as another option for people to either indicate support or non-support. Just to give us a quick shot, we could put some additional information out on the city's website at some point in the future, but getting a quick pulse of the people prior to spending $25,000 for the geotechnical stuff may be a good thing to have in our pocket.
I think
And-
I agree. I think even some of the like the map that shows the 9 locations, this new proposed location is one of the old locations. So it has been presented in the past. If I recall correctly, 3 years ago at the candidates forum, I said publicly that it was actually my favorite because I knew it was the highest point. Although it was outside the UGB. So I think we can use some of the materials even in this to lay out the 2 locations and some of the pros and cons maybe with the survey.
Okay, thank you. I've got that down as a note and we'll see what we can come up with. We'll work with you also on that so that it covers what it is that you desire.
Carrie?
I would ask that before the survey goes out, that someone on the council or a couple of people on the council have a chance to look at it and maybe fine tune it. I know you're talking about using the one in your slideshow presentation, and I think you want to keep it simple, but I think you also need to just be a little more detailed in a couple of the questions.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Smith. I completely agree with that. To back up a little bit, we just based it off some ideas that we had and put the infrastructure ready for a survey to be sent out, but we haven't come to a final design of the survey. So
Yeah, okay.
we'd be in touch with you folks to make that work. That's very important.
And Dan? Do you have any?
I'm all for saving the taxpayers $3 million in a property purchase, as well as I think that the site actually is quite a good site for our fire hall, so I'm fully behind it.
So I think we have a consensus. I don't think we need to take any formal action at this point in time. Chad, do you feel like you have enough direction?
I do. I think we're going to modify the survey a little bit, individually get that survey out to you folks, take comments within the next week or so, and then with putting on some of the ideas that you've already come up with. And then we can get that ready and get it out. Try to
Great.
spend money on the site.
Thank you. Any other comments on that? And, hey guys, did we even do visitors? Did we do visitors? I think I skipped it.
Not yet.
I skipped it on the agenda, guys. So we got to back up. Has anyone sent an email to Chad?
You're muted, buddy.
Paulina,
Yes,
can you hear me? This is Jack Zimmerman.
I
I
can.
got in. I got in late on the conversation here, so I apologize for not email to Chad. But I find it very encouraging that the Allstead exchange has been proposed to the city, and I think that's a good thing. But in terms of the new survey with regards to High Point, and in light of the fact that Ed Murphy has released his letter to the public where he has withdrawn his intent to sell lots, and I would think it would be fair to the survey process that somewhere in a narrative form, you would let people know that the owner participant in the sale is absolutely against it, and he's even threatened to litigate against it. It would show how difficult High Point is going to be if the residents insisted on pursuing High Point. And then my second comment, in light of the old Holstead property, how far is that the Hertz station, and is not the Hertz station of a higher elevation than Olstead? And do we not have better control of Hertig as a city over it versus negotiating with Olstead?
Jack, can you give us your address, please, for the record?
Absolutely. 408 West Kershaw Circle, Gerhart.
Thank you. Duly noted. If Chad wants to respond to the question about the elevation, you can. Otherwise, we can get back to you.
Okay. So you have no response then? Is that the record will reflect?
I can.
I appreciate your comments.
Okay.
Hold on just a moment. I'll take a look at that information really quickly. I wasn't prepared. I have it, but I just don't have it here. So
I think
Well,
the comment regarding the narrative is really important, because in one instance we have, if we're talking about the High Point versus the, is it Olmsted? In one instance we have a neighborhood association, a homeowners association, and an individual prop owner, neither of whom want the project, both who are threatening litigation. A prior price point of $3 million was the demand, and or was the ask. And in the other, we have someone who views it as an amenity and is offering to donate it to the city. And in my mind, that really helps people understand how much more complicated one process is than the other. And in addition to those two threatened litigations, we also would have to use eminent domain for the road owned by the neighborhood association. And we could, but then what the value of that road is not something that will be easily ascertainable, and that could be litigated too. And so there's just a lot that could go wrong when you don't have willing property owners, and those unwilling property owners have a lot of financial resources. and they have an attorney already. So that really is a complicating factor for people to consider. And I agree with that. That should be part of the narrative.
Okay, good. And Peter, could you educate me as to Murphy's implied statement that just the threat, whether it's verbal or written, of eminent domain puts a cloud, let's say, on his property, and I assume that would go to the Palisade community also. And would it be your position to comply that you would give him formal notice that you're no longer seeking eminent domain?
You know, I mean, that's something that the council and I would have to talk about. The concern would be the reason not to do that would be because we don't yet have the geotech on the other location, and we can't unilaterally move our urban growth boundary. We would actually need the blessing of DLCD. I tend to think we would likely get that because Meg Reed would see this as a real amenity, you know, being 12 feet higher than the Highland site, and understanding all the complications with the Highland site and the potential for litigation. And I think also just I hope everyone's cognitive right now of it's a 25% difference price in cost of one where the other. And if we were in the middle of litigation regarding the High Point, it's not like we're going to be able to go for a state grant that would be likely, because we have no assurance that we would be getting the property or what price. So there's really no shortage of complications with High Point. With that said, we don't know for sure that what the geotech on the new option would be, or as well as the you know, we would need DLCD staff's assistance and sign off in order to trade that urban growth boundary expansion. I understand why Mr. Murphy would like that letter, and I think to his point, because if someone is buying a lot that they want to build on, they're not going to want the city to then come in and use eminent domain on it six months later. And I think that's a fair point for him to make. And I'm sympathetic to that point, actually. But you know, the park is just a non-option, and the downtown option from a public safety perspective is not really not at all ideal. And so, you know, obviously the council tells me how to jump, and then I try and do it. But you know, we could work with Mr. Murphy if we can, but I feel like we probably need to do a little bit more due diligence with DLCD and get some of that, both community buy-in, and I hope they would buy in, but then the geotech for the new site. So, you know, I really see it both ways, and as I said, I'm sympathetic to the points that Mr. Murphy has made, but up until very recently, we didn't have this alternative option that seemed really promising. So,
right.
Yeah, that's kind of the balancing act we have to do.
I guess the puzzlement to me is that now that Murphy said he's no longer engaged in the sale of the property and that he's willing to litigate over it, let's say while the city is making up their mind, he puts the property up for sale, he has a sale on it, and the buyer finds out there's this supposed cloud of eminent domain claim. Has the city at that point interfered in the sale of that property to where the city would be liable? And that's the question.
You know, I mean, as I've learned the hard way, it always is possible for people to sue the city, and you know, someone could perhaps make a common law claim, interference with a business opportunity, something of that nature. Ultimately, you know, if eminent domain were to be used, we would need to, the real question will be evaluation. And if he were to sell a lot at, say, $750,000 or 800 or whatever it was, I mean, that would be the best evidence of value and would likely impact what we might have to pay in an eminent domain type of scenario. So I don't know that the claim would be particularly viable, but again, I mean, we're dealing with some litigation now that I would not have expected at all. So
Yeah.
it's hard to predict these things.
Yeah, well, I'm sympathetic to that concern, but I think it would be fair to the Murphy family that you quickly decide whether you're going to go after the property, because there is quite a bit of wealth involved and to the family, and I know they want to actualize that, and I think it would be reasonable, if you were in their shoes, to expect the city to make up its mind quickly. And I would hope that you can do that soon, because you're making progress on the Olstead property. But at the same time, too, on the Olstead property, I believe Mr. Sweet has indicated most of the volunteers are more closely located to Olstead, so therefore they ought to be more closely located to Hertig. And I would imagine it would be easier for you to control and expand that facility than anything else. But that's a comment, and I appreciate the education, Peter. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that part of the problem with going up the hill, as I understand it from talking to Meg, Reed, and others, is that some of the soil, not up the hill, but in between the current road infrastructure and up the hill, would likely liquefy in the event. And so what we would have to do structurally for the road would make it more like a bridge, more like how they build roads in Louisiana. So it would need to be raised, and it would need to be anchored really deep, so that if that liquefaction occurred, it would survive it. Because if it didn't survive it, then even if the volunteers got up to the station, then they wouldn't be able to get down to do the public safety. So that's one of the reasons that in looking at and doing that limited study for where to put swapped urban growth boundary, that the Olstead location would likely come in higher than if we were to go up the hill, because up the hill would have that higher infrastructure cost to both anchor and raise the road. So I don't know exactly what that would be. I mean, I've and my city engineers that I've worked with will tell you that I'm not particularly good at guessing these things, and they're really good at measuring them because they're an engineer and I'm not.
Peter, when you say going up the hill, do you mean the East Hills or do you mean Hertig?
Okay, I thought that Hertig was up the East Hill.
I can answer that if you'd like.
Okay.
Hertig is the rural fire protection district for Surf Pines area. So that's outside the city. My understanding is that the city of Gerhart property owners' fire rates would go up anytime we have a fire station located outside our city. Chad, can you confirm that?
Yeah, if we were to use Hertig Station as our main station, which is approximately 31 feet in elevation at the parking lot in Hertig Station, if we were to use that, then our ISO rating through insurance would likely change, because it would increase the call distance the ability for us to get to downtown, and the fact that it is outside the city of Deerheart. There are some calculations. So yeah, I think it's fair to say insurance rates could and would probably go up. And just to kind of give you an idea, so Hurdick Station at 31 feet, the reason why it could potentially be a dry location is that it's kind of distance from the run-up area. So if we were to use Hurdick Station as our main station and have that as the resiliency center and have people, evacuate to there eventually, it would likely be dry, but there may be more subduction because that location is closer to the aquifer, and the closer to the aquifer you are, the more subduction you get, such as what would happen in McCormick Gardens Road in the swamp area. So the distance between the Hurdick Station and the potential site that Mr. Osborne has offered is 2.6 miles. So that would be 2.6, 3.6, maybe 4 miles from Hurdick Station into the main part of Deerheart. So that would increase some call distances. So for example, from Kershaw Circle to the Hurdick Station is 3.5 miles. So that is correct. The Kershaw Circle area to the new site is approximately 1.5 miles or 3 minutes response time. So that's just, and just to boot, to walk to Hurdick Station from Kershaw Circle would take people approximately 1 hour and 9 minutes.
Uh-huh. Well, I certainly appreciate the fact that there's an issue merging the city rural fire department with the Hurdick rural district. But just as a side note, I've heard this argument over and over again by various people about the insurance rates. And so I've had myself call 3 insurance companies and then 2 or 3 other residents called theirs. And their insurance is underwritten based upon the seaside services because it's a full-time staff. So that's just, I guess, information that's a little...
Not true. We have our own ISO rating here in Deerheart, and ISO is the one that has the information of what the insurance differences or the percentage differences would be. And Seaside they have a few more paid people, but they are also largely volunteer.
Okay, I would never question that, Chad. I'm just telling you what the insurance company said, and we spoke to the underwriters. So maybe the underwriters are uninformed, but that's what we were told. So that probably will have nothing material in anybody's decision making.
Okay, thank you, Jack. I'm gonna do a time check. It's 5 minutes to 9, folks. Are there any other visitors
Mayor
or
Cochran,
visitors who want? Go ahead.
Phoebe Mitchell had requested to speak, and I think Christy sent you some information on what she was going to speak upon. So she would, I think, still would like to be a visitor also.
Okay.
Thank you. This is Phoebe Michelle from 661 10th Street. My submitted communication can stand on its own. I'm really going to largely yield my time because in light of these new developments with the potential new location, I think these comments are already old news. So I am very grateful to hear that we have what looks like a good alternative, and I thank the City Council for looking into this new location. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Phoebe. And Chad, do we have anybody else?
Double checking now. No, I don't believe we do. No.
Okay, I apologize for not getting to the visitors' comments earlier, but as it turned out, I think the discussion was helpful. So forgive me this time around. We're going to move on to new business. We're going to do a couple items here. Hopefully we can go pretty quickly. The first,
Mayor,
sorry. Go.
sorry to interrupt, but were you going to ask if anybody else wanted to speak?
Happy
Normally
to.
this is Christy. Normally you poll the callers and poll the
I will
attendees.
I will give that a try. So on my screen, first I have Steve Olstead. And you can just unmute yourself if you'd like to speak. Next, I have Tom Thies. Next is Cheryl. Next is Bibi, who already spoke. And next is Jonas Bury.
Mayor, Jonas is actually going to help us with the next item on the agenda.
Okay. And next is Dave Smith. And next is Melanie Bassett. YZ. George. Darcy. I'm going to skip over RJ. I got caller 5. I don't know your name. Caller 2 was Jack. Caller 4. CO. Okay. Caller 4 and 5 were unmuted, but I didn't hear them speaking. So thank you, Christy. I'm going to move on then to new business, the water bond refinance, and that information's in the packet. Chad, can you walk us through that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Cockrum. So this is the discussion about the water bond refinancing. It is done by authorization of the Gearhart City Council. The benefit of refinancing will directly affect the Gearhart taxpayer. City staff has been working with a team from Hawkins, Delafield, and Woods, and Jonas Berry, Vice President of Public Finance and a banker with D.A. Davidson & Co., to help lead a discussion of the options. Should the council choose to proceed with the financing of the Series 2011 bonds, a resolution would then be drafted and presented to the council at a public meeting. The recommendations so far is we do recommend approving the resolution moving forward with refinancing the bonds, and Jonas will be available here to explain the details if you are ready for him.
Yes, please.
All right, and I see you, Jonas. Jonas, welcome to the meeting.
Great. Good evening. Thanks, Chad, Mayor and councilors. Thanks for the invitation. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and to work with the city. So I know you've got a huge full agenda and more to cover, so I'll try to kind of take as few minutes as I can here, but wanted to at least introduce myself, introduce D.A. Davidson, let you know what we do, talk a little bit about the municipal bond market, describe, as Chad said, what the savings might look like if we execute this transaction, and then talk a little bit real briefly about some key points in the process, and of course Q&A more than welcome as we go. So I'll try to hold this to 10 minutes or less here. My background, longtime Oregonian, all but the first few months of my life. Grew up in the Mid-Willamette Valley, went to Portland State University for my undergrad and my MBA. I spent about 10 years as an advisor to local governments in the Pacific Northwest in financial matters, and then most recently spent 10 years working for the city of Portland, managing their debt program, about a $3 billion program, and then about 5 years of that as the business manager for the sewer stormwater utility for the city of Portland, essentially the CFO for that utility. Recently returned to the private side, where we're now back to working with cities, counties, special districts, school districts, utilities in Oregon, helping secure capital financing for new projects and for refinancings. I don't do this alone. We have an Oregon team. My colleague Matt Donahue has been doing this for about the similar experience. We have a support team that backs us up in some admin functions, and of course our sales and trading desks, both traders here in Portland, desks in Seattle. D.A. Davidson, based in Great Falls, Montana, of all places, but have offices in about 27 states, provide a variety of financial services, but our team is the financial fixed income public finance team here in Oregon. Predominantly what we do is provide underwriting services to local governments. So in our role as an underwriter, what we do is coordinate the financing and the financing team. It's a highly regulated process, so we make sure we go through those steps. We run all the numbers, scenarios, keep an eye on the market, etc. Recommend structures that make sense, or give feedback on structures that you may like. We will prepare a disclosure document. I'll talk about that in just a minute, but a document that will go out to investors describing the city, the financing itself. And then, of course, importantly, critically, we find investors for the financing, the people who will buy your bonds on the day of pricing and lock in those rates. The Oregon team here, our Oregon team, over the past 3 years, we've done about 60 transactions, give or take, in Oregon. So about 20 a year for a small team like ours is pretty good. So lots of experience around the state, and actually have had quite great success on the coastal northern coast region in the past couple of years. And of course, we're going to work really closely with city staff, with Chad in particular, work with bond counsel, work with your city attorney, Peter, and other financing team members, of course, active participants. Very briefly on the municipal market, or muni market, M-U-N-I, muni market. What that means is the borrowing market. Typically, it's issuance of bonds for local governments, states, local governments, schools, public utilities. Investors will purchase your bonds. They'll give you your money, and they expect to get that money back at a future point. And they'll earn interest payments on that. Typically, it's semi-annually. That's very consistent. That interest rate is based upon market conditions at the time, and on the credit quality of the issuer. Local governments typically are high quality issuers. Tax exemption is kind of the name of the game in most cases, most typically for government issuers. Those investors in your bonds typically don't pay income tax on that interest. And because they don't pay tax, they can give you a lower cost of borrowing, that tax exemption cost of borrowing. So if you're going out if you're a private corporation, you might be borrowing at a 3% taxable rate. Well, an investor who's looking at a comparable government only wants 2% because they don't have to pay that 35% in tax. So that's really the advantage here. And of course, you'll qualify for that tax exemption. The tax exempt municipal market right now is at historic lows. It has been for the past really couple of years. Just for comparison purposes, the 10-year AAA rated kind of benchmark rate right now is 1.35%, which is kind of ridiculously low. You'll pay a little more than that because you will be a AAA rated entity, but compare that to a couple of years ago, that rate might have been around 2%, still historically low a couple of years ago. 10 years ago, that might have been 2.5 or 3%. So still a very, very favorable rate environment for refinancing, refunding as is proposed right now. Favorable environment for new money issuance. I heard a good part of the discussion about the possible new project, so good environment for that, at least as of this moment in time. It is very typical that bonds have so this will be, the proposal is to refund your Series 2011 bonds. It is very typical that bonds are refundable in year 10. And so here we are in 2021. It is year 10. They are refundable today. And so this is a very typical process, particularly in an environment like we're in now, where rates are very low. What does that result look like? I think Chad has shared some of these details with you, but Of course, it's indicative. This is kind of based upon our snapshot of the market today, but savings is pretty good. Usually you might expect to see 5% is kind of a good benchmark of when it makes sense to kind of go forward with refunding. Right now, you're at around 12% is our best estimate, meaning your new debt service, once the refinancing occurs, will be in total about 12% lower than your current debt service. So you're reducing your future costs by about 12%. And of course, in reducing your future costs, what you're really reducing is the levy that you're collecting from Gerhardt taxpayers. We looked at two scenarios. Chad, I don't know how much you want to go into this, but we looked at both kind of two typical scenarios. One is just the same, it's called uniform savings, the same amount of savings every remaining year. So you've got 10 years left. We said, well, gee, if we structured it so you get roughly the same amount of savings, it's about $30,000 a year or just over $300,000 for the remaining life of the bonds. I heard some discussion earlier about the kind of overlapping bond issues and levies. So per Chad's request, we also looked at one that we called kind of front loading, where you take some of that savings up front. So while you have those 2015 bonds still outstanding through 2025, expiring for the 26 levy, we try to push those savings up there to reduce that combined levy while that overlapping bond issue is still outstanding. And it's about the same result. You get around $65,000 a year in savings, but you take all those savings in those first few years there, and the last few years are less. But it still is about the same net impact, about a 12% savings. Just a matter of how you prefer to take those savings. So that's just real big picture on results, and of course happy to dig more deeply. Process-wise, if you do choose to go forward, and my understanding is there's a council authorization proposed tonight. That's great. We have to have that, of course, to have the legal authorization. The next big step is preparing your disclosure document. It's called a POS, which is not the car that I drove in high school and most of college, but it's a preliminary official statement. That's really the disclosure document. If you're familiar with stock prospectus, it's similar to a stock prospectus that describes key material information about the city and the securities. So we've actually already kind of got a head start on that process. That's kind of the heaviest lift. So we're working a bit on that now, but that's the next big step. And there will be an opportunity for council members and for the mayor to take a look at that. What we really want to know is there something material? It's material meaning an investor would really want to know this to make an investment decision that you know about that maybe didn't come up in the disclosure. It's not typical that happens, but we want to at least give you an opportunity to see that before that's published. We will have a rating conversation, credit rating. You have those on your existing bonds. Proposal right now is we'll go back to Standard & Poor's. They have you rated at A+. They're one notch higher than your other rating agency is Moody's. We think we can go forward with just the one rating with S&P, save some costs there by just paying the one independent rating agency and getting that higher rating. So we'll go through that process. I think it's a very valuable one. Rating agencies give you an independent assessment of their opinion about your city's credit quality and maybe things that you can do better and maybe some things that are risk points. So I always think that's a really valuable, it's frankly required for the market, but it's also some really valuable feedback for you. And then we'll begin, after we publish that disclosure document with the rating in hand, do some pre-marketing, find investors, price them. We will pick the day of pricing right now. We've targeted May 18th. That could change, but that's the target date right now. And on that date, we'll have investors lined up. We'll lock in the interest rates for the bonds. You'll know kind of what you're looking at. And then it takes a week or so, usually about 10 days, to close the bonds. They'll be gone, or they'll be issued. The new bonds will be issued. Your old bonds will go away, and these new ones will replace them. So that's the kind of basic big picture snapshot of kind of where we're going. Chad, if you have specific things you'd like to address, happy to do that. And of course, Mayor and councilors, happy to answer any questions that you may have.
No, thank you, Jonas. You did a good job there. I don't have anything to add at this point.
Do we want to make a motion so that we can have discussion?
So, Mayor, does this require a recommendation for motion? Okay. Well, I move that we approve resolution number 956, a resolution of the City of Gerhart, Oregon, authorizing refunding of general obligation bonds.
I second that.
And is there discussion?
Anytime we can save the taxpayer money, I'm all for it. So let's go.
We'd be crazy not to.
Do we have to decide right now tonight whether we want to do the front load or the level savings?
No, ma'am, no, Mayor. That decision really, we've got a good 4 to 6 weeks to make that. We really need to have that pinned down before we publish the disclosure document that'll have those details in it. So we do have time to make that decision.
Right. Other questions, Dan?
I have nothing
Are we
other
ready
than
to vote?
support.
Are we ready to vote then? I see Rita nodding her head. All those in favor say aye.
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 And those opposed? I think we're unanimous on passing resolution 956, a resolution of the City of Gerhart, Oregon, authorizing refundings of general obligation bonds.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council, and appreciate your help, Jonas. Thank you very much.
Good, absolutely. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonas.
Next item is the playground equipment vision. As far as I'm concerned, Chad, you nailed my vision as far as the equipment. You know, I'd like to pass this all on to the Parks Committee, see if they have any feedback or anything. Is that what you were just asking? Did you capture the vision?
Yeah, it was just an opportunity for discussions. I would like to give a quick update. As of now, the donations that the City of Gerhart has received is $13,650 from various donors. We've sent letters of thanks to all of them. And in reference to the coin challenge, the quarter mile challenge for the quarters, that is Berkeley Sturgill's group. She has a Facebook account, and she is also continuing to try to raise money for these structures. And I just had a firefighter a few minutes ago just bringing a bag of quarters, which is pretty cool. So, you know, so I would recommend everybody check out Berkeley's Facebook video, which I believe we have posted on the blog. And then from there on, with these ideas of different types of equipment, and again, Paulina, with help of some of the committee members, we're looking at some wooden type play structures that would maybe be better suited for Gerhart as far as the looks of them were included in on this packet. So moving forward, I would think that we would pass this on to the Parks Committee.
Any other comments?
I had one question. Have we done any research into how having a playground with equipment under the city's ownership will impact liability insurance?
I believe there will be the potential for a slight insurance increase. And we've also put information on here that has a lot of guidelines for how we would do that. And moving forward, we would work with our insurance company to do everything that we needed to do to minimize liability. I'm not sure exactly what the cost difference would be though, Brent, but it's not that much.
Well, could we have a quick chat and say, here's some examples of equipment that we're looking at and how would that affect our premium? Just an estimate?
Sure. We'll talk to CIS about that.
Great, thanks.
Okay, I don't think we're going to take any action on that. So then the next is the employee handbook. Final action on that. We've gone over the document in the public hearing, so
I move that we adopt the new employee handbook as amended.
Second that.
so Brent with a
that's-
motion. Go ahead, Dan.
That's amended as amended this evening.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
because our earlier amendments were already incorporated into this edition.
Right. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Is that everybody? Okay,
Sounded like
thank
it.
you. Sorry? Sounded like it?
Yeah.
All right, the final item then is appointing a planning commission member. I just want to let you all know that I took the file home last weekend and reviewed all of the applications from about the last 5 years. And one really stood out to me. I've also been a part of all of the interviews that the council's done over the last 5 years. And I would like to nominate Sharon Klopfer to the Planning Commission. She was part of the Dune Vegetation Committee. She is passionate about the Gerhardt Comprehensive Plan and keeping it alive and well. This will take a motion and a second from the council.
I move that we approve the mayor's recommendation for Sharon Koffler
Oh, I second
for the
that.
planning commission.
So Carrie made a motion and Rita seconded. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you all very much. It's 9:19. Is there any
Mayor
business?
Polina,
Oh,
I may have one other thing here that in my notes in regards to the handbook. Let me just double check this here real quick. Oh boy, we're so close.
let's save it for 2050.
Well, it's actually, it could be kind of important, and I want Peter's account of this. In the acknowledgement, employee acknowledgement at the end, it says that that the city of Gerhardt may terminate my employment relationship at any time for any lawful reason, with or without cause, and with or without notice, other than promises that may be found in that collective bargaining agreement, which we don't have. I acknowledge that no promises have been made to me and are inconsistent with this at-will statement. Peter, my question is how that relates to the officers of such as the treasurer, the police chief, and the recorder.
All of the city employees would be at-will city employees. So that Oregon is an at-will state. So people can be caused for any reason, whether there's cause or not. Whether there's cause or not could impact their ability to collect unemployment. But other than that, a person can be fired for any legal reason. They cannot be fired for illegal reason, of course. Anything that would be a violation of federal law, etc. But yeah, that is that's consistent with Oregon law.
So just to clarify that, an at-will employee that is also an officer, as per the charter, could still be released, but that would have to be through the city council. Is that true?
Correct. Like the city council is the boss of certain employees, and so they would be the ones that would need to make that decision.
Okay, thank you. And I think that works for us for sure. And sorry to bring that up at the last moment, but I just wanted to be thorough.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else.
May I ask a question about that?
Yes.
So this is a new agreement, and what if an employee of the city chooses not to sign it?
I mean, if we're requiring them to sign it as part of, I think that what we probably say is we're requiring them to sign it as part of their continued employment. And we've tried to work with staff quite a bit so that they understood this and made numerous changes based on their feedback. So I would anticipate that everyone would sign it. If someone refused to, though, could that potentially be grounds for terminating them? It might be, because we need our employees to agree to follow our protocols, and there's a lot in here regarding protections like workplace harassment, and if someone is unwilling to agree to those things, that could be really problematic for us, because we want to make sure, to the extent that we can, that everyone's kind of on equal footing and everyone is following the same rules and understands what those are, and that we're being fair. So I think we've done enough outreach with staff that wouldn't be an issue. But I guess if that were to happen, we would have to determine what an appropriate next action would be.
So in this case, and unfortunately I didn't track all of this as well, missed that one. The police chief, my understanding is it can only be fired for cause before tonight. So now, in essence, we've taken that away from him. What legal recourse does he have against the city in that regard?
Well, practically speaking, anytime you review your personnel policies and adopt new ones, there are going to be certain impacts. I mean, under the current rules, people could accrue a lot of vacation, like a large amount. And, under this, there's some limitations in what they can do, because I think that what they found throughout the state is there really benefits to an organization if someone takes the vacation. And if someone works for like 10 years without taking a vacation, that isn't necessarily healthy for the person, whether they want to or not. So those are the sort of changes that we've kind of worked through with people. Practically speaking, right now you are the boss of the police chief, and so it would be the city council that would be making that decision. And there's no reason to think that, I mean, I guess you could, for no reason, fire the police chief, but it doesn't seem particularly likely. But yeah, that is a difference for him, and I assume it's something that he understands because we've spent a lot of time with the police chief on these policies.
Yes, Peter, and I think Dan is correct that currently in our charter, the word for cause is in there rather than at will for those non-elected officers.
Well, it is there. I had that conversation with Chief Bowman as well. And all that says to me is that any council that is considering firing an officer should be looking not only at the employee handbook, but the charter. And you certainly probably want to take the most conservative approach, which would be to fire for cause. I mean, that's how I would look at it. It's
Yeah,
not like
that's a
it's
reasonable
not like they're
interpretation.
in opposition.
Okay, if that's Peter's interpretation, and we're talking about taking the charter into consideration when making any of those adjustments, or releasing an employee who is an officer as subscribed by the charter, I think we're all right. Just the fact that it's not on paper, that might be an issue, but I think that would be the employee, if released without cause that is in that, would potentially have a case against the city of Deerheart also. So doing things the right way would benefit us. So sounds like that would be okay to leave it as is then.
Right, and you as the city council are charged with interpreting your charter, but this might be the a rare instance where someone could make the case that your interpretation was clearly wrong, and that you must have that you're bound under the terms of the charter that it be for cause. And so I think that is, you guys have a really unusual charter. That's probably not a surprise to you for me to say, but for instance, it sets forth the order of your meeting in the charter, very unusual, but it is what it is, and we work with it as we do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All I have.
I was about ready to adjourn the meeting until I turned to page 2. There's a feedback session. Due to the late hour, I'm going to table that for this time. And so now we have council concerns, last item. Go ahead, Rita.
Oh. I want to thank the city administrator for his written report. I really appreciate that. I like to look at it ahead of time, and I really appreciate it. And my last concern is, I know that we did not discuss the noise ordinance. And I just want to make sure that the next time that we talk about it, are we talking about ordinance 877 and 876?
Potentially.
What about ordinance 14 that was included in our packet?
No.
Does that going to work in conjunction with the other two ordinances, or does the two ordinances negate 814?
814 is no longer valid.
So there's no ordinance against barking dogs. Oh, what's happening? We'll talk about it later. I just wanted to make sure.
814.
There is an ordinance, a new ordinance on barking dogs also that was put into the noise ordinance, and it talked about the amount of time the dogs could bark, that it was observed by a police officer through complaints, and there is a current ordinance that made it a lot easier to enforce than our previous ordinance, which said thou shall not have barking dogs. That was difficult. So yeah, we made that change, and Peter, I think you'll remember that.
Thank you. I'm done.
Carrie?
I have 2 things. Peter, Are we supposed to record every meeting that we have?
So under state public meetings laws, there's no requirement that the meeting be recorded. There are requirements that a meeting have minutes, and what those minutes need to specify are, the date and time, the subject matter, any votes, and just a reasonable summary so that someone could figure out what's happening at the meeting. The one exception is the executive session. What those specify, those meeting minutes aren't they don't have that same level of specificity, because what happens in executive session is supposed to be, secret. So that's the one caveat. But what I'd say is, for regular meetings of the city council, a recording is a good idea. With COVID and all these type of it's sometimes, there have been glitches with the recording. So, maybe someone says a few words before the recording starts. But I think as long as we're doing our best for those regular city council meetings to record them accurately, we're pretty safe.
Okay, thank you very much. And my other concern, this paper, can we think about going to tablets and get rid of all this paper? Honestly, I can't stand the idea of going to a tablet and not having paper, but I cannot stand the idea of going through half a ream of paper or a ream of paper and just going, you take it out of order and all of a sudden you're all messed up. So I would like the council to consider, because we're coming into a budget process, and we could just allocate some money for tablets, and then we can all get it at the same time and do whatever. Just needs to have a scribe on it and a camera. And then we can do everything we want to do right there. So please consider it. I'm done.
We'll nominate Carrie for the Gerhart Green Award.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Grant, concerns?
I think I've already aired all my concerns, so let's adjourn.
Dan Jesse's
Before we adjourn, could I briefly even further complicate the at-will versus employment for our officers? And that is that after my initial thing that I said, I did recall that some of the cases regarding not binding a future council involved long-term contracts for people. And so by taking away your ability to, by having a charter that took away your ability to terminate people but for cause, it's possible that charter section itself would be invalidated as by a court. So we really would be making some new law, which is probably why we don't want to be doing that. But there are multiple plausible interpretations.
Thank you.
Dan Jesse. Any concerns?
Thank you for that, Peter, and I have nothing else.
Is there a motion to adjourn? Thank you for your hard work, everybody.
I make a motion we adjourn. Dan got it.
All right. Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good evening, all.
Everybody.
Good night.
All right. Thank you for your help, Peter, through that, and counselors for all your work. Madam Mayor.